New Thought Media Network. We are a global broadcast network of positive music, media, and entertainment, inspiring humanity's evolution along the journey of enlightenment and creating a world of love, peace, empowerment, and prosperity for all. New Thought Media Network. Positively inspiring.
Good morning and welcome to the New Thought Media Saturday morning lecture series. Boy, I am so glad to be with you today to talk about the subject that we have prepared for today. Today, we're looking at chapter 10 of the Science of Mind textbook. If you don't have one, get you one. It's a great tool to allow us to really get deep into our faith and to really begin to activate this thing called faith. And so today we're going to look at this idea of faith that is found on chapter 10. That's pages 155 through 162 of the Science of Mind textbook. And so if you're out there live and you're watching, share your name and location in the comments field, and so we'll be able to say hey and hold on. And so we want to say hello to everyone that's stepping in. Hello. Excuse me. We got a little snow here in Colorado, believe it or not, in the middle of spring, and so my sleep pattern got messed up a little bit, but we're here today and we're ready to go. So first and foremost, I want to ask the question, and if you don't mind, drop something in the chat. What do you, or how do you define faith? How do you define faith? I'm curious, because faith has a lot of meanings as people try to define it. And I think right at the beginning of the Science of Mind chapter 10, there's a great definition, and I'll just bring that up, that says the universe is a spiritual system. Its laws are those of intelligence. We approach it through mind, which enables us to know, will, and act. And that's the first sentence of this chapter on faith, right? And so one thing we get right off the bat is that faith is part of a spiritual system. It's a universal system that allows us to approach things with a knowingness, with an awareness, with a point of reference that allow us to move easily and effortlessly, even though there may be some struggle in there, because we have faith. Now, the thing we really want to kind of hone in right here is faith is more than mere belief. Right? It is the very substance of that which is believed and is activated by love. Now, what does that mean? What we're saying here is that faith is sometimes looked at as trust. And that's not entirely wrong. Because if I have faith in something, that means I trust it. But I could also lose trust in that I can have a trust in something and it mistreats me or misplaces my trust, and then my faith in it dies. Right? A good example of that for me sometime when I think about it is if I go buy a brand new car, my faith of putting the key in the ignition and turning the engine is pretty sound. Now, if I have an older car, 20-year-old, 30-year-old car, my faith is not as, or my trust rather, is not as keen as to when that will happen. Right? And so we begin to look at faith and as this system of understanding. We say in religious science that this teaching is a philosophy, an ideology, and a way of life. So it is a culmination of things that creates this foundation that we stand on. And so when we talk about faith, that's what we are looking at. Now, again, I want to just ask if anyone out there has a definition that they work with in terms of how they see faith. Please put it in. And if not, that's okay. We'll keep moving. But I want to highlight this because we've all heard the verse of the scripture that says, "Faith is the evidence of things unseen." Things unseen. And so when we think about it from a science of mind perspective, we look at it in the sense of faith is an affirmative mental approach to reality. An affirmative mental approach to reality. And what we mean by that is it's a mental attitude of trust, right? Now, we just talked about trust as not being the foundation. The foundation is the faith that we have learned to incorporate into our lives. And it is a relationship with the invisible spiritual nature of all life that transcends the physical, mental plane in which we currently exist. It is the existence of things. It is the evidence of things not seen. Right? Because when we have faith in something, somebody said, well, why do you have faith in that? Well, you can't always put words to that, right? You can't always articulate what it is that gives you the conviction that this thing is true or this thing will come through for you. And we have here that says, Shay says, I was going to say that it is about seeing beyond appearances. Yes. Because no one, has ever seen faith. They've seen the results of faith, but no one has actually seen faith itself. Because it is a mental attitude, as we're saying here. It is a complete system of spiritual laws that create a foundation of how the universe works, and how when we align ourselves to that with the trust, not a mistrust, but the trust, meaning I don't have any doubts because I'm going beyond appearances. It allows me to move and allows things in our lives to happen unbeknownst to ourselves, right? And we Shay goes on to say it's also largely based on past miraculous experiences. Now that's the key. That's the key, right? Because if we look at we know we live in an evolutionary world. And I look at it in this evolutionary fashion. We may start out with hope, I hope a thing happens. And hope is a great place to start. It's better than despair. And after a while, that hope turns into a belief. And I move from I hope something happens to I believe it will happen. Little more oomph to it, if you will. And then we move from believe to trust. I trust that this will happen. I trust if I do the right things, if I put myself in the right alignment with the spirit of the divine, things will happen. After I've had some experience with that, if this is where we're going, then I begin to have faith. I have faith that this thing will happen. So I've moved from hope to belief to trust to faith. Now, the difference between those, when I hope something will happen, it's a little bit shaky, right? My conviction that it's going to happen. And then when I move to belief, there's a little more fervor behind it. But after I've had that belief and things begin to appear through the grace of the divine, then I begin to trust it. And then from there, I move into faith. So when I come into the house and I cut on the light switch, I have faith that the light is going to turn on. Right? Now, of course, there's exceptions if I have a bad light bulb or I didn't pay the electric bill. But given the foundation of how it works, when I cut the switch, I have faith that it will work. And then the ultimate place that we're really striving to move, because after we get comfortable with faith and believing in this unseen, we go to a place of knowing, right? We go to a place of knowing that the divine intelligence of the universe is always present, is always working in our favor, is always leading us to a higher evolution of ourselves. And that's what we are charged with as beings on this planet, is to continue to evolve into our highest expression of life, love, and faith, knowing that we are always in a position for God to lead us, for God to guide us, and for us to have really this conversation. Because faith is a conversation, right? We go back and we look at this first thing. The universe is a spiritual system. Its laws are those of intelligence. We approach it through the mind, which enables us to know, will, and act. That's what we're here to do, and that's what we're working with when we begin to cultivate our faith and to create this platform of how we live our life. So I'm going to stop there, see if anyone has any questions or comments or points of contention, because this is an active conversation, right? The way I look at faith right now, if I go through the experience of this day, that will affect my faith in terms of how I understand it or how I believe it, because we have to get with life every day in a new perspective. Now, we can do this because of this statement right here by Khalil Gibran. Faith is a knowledge within the heart beyond the reach of proof. Now, just think about that. That speaks to that evidence unseen. If there's a spark in our hearts, there's a knowledge in our heart that goes beyond the proof of something seen. You know, we have that saying that says, if I can see it, I can believe it. But the real statement, I believe, is if I believe it, I can see it. If I believe it, I can see it. And that's what Khalil is talking about here, is that this faith is something that this knowledge rather is something that is already in our heart, and it goes beyond proving it, because there's a knowingness, there's a connectedness, there's a relationship that speaks to what is unseen, right? Because it says here, faith is about cultivating a deep sense of trust, surrender, and connection with the infinite wisdom, love, and energy that pervades all of existence. Now think about that. We've often heard, or maybe even used ourselves, this idea that there's a spiritual energy, or that there's this pervasive connected tissue, if you will, of the universe, which is the foundation of God. And we understand that if we surrender to that, if we trust that, then there becomes this connection to this infinite wisdom and love that allows us to do all things, that allows us to move beyond circumstances, that allows us to see beyond the point of where we are right now that may not be comfortable. You know, we've all heard of that idea of growing pains, right? Because when we grow from one stage to another, or one perspective to another, it sometimes has a little pain associated with it. And that's what we have to really begin to incorporate in our thought, in our mental attitude. And that is, life is full. It has ups and downs. It has high tides and low tides. It has yin and yang. And when we can see it in this way, it allows us to really begin to understand what faith means. Faith means that when I'm in that bad spot, I got faith that it's gonna work out. Faith means if I'm in this good spot, I know it may not be good like this forever. So I need to just trust, surrender, and know that when I get to that next stage of evolutionary growth, it is for my good. It propels me to a greater understanding, a greater expression of love, and deepens my faith. Shay says this. She says, I do have proof, but it's personal proof. The very fact that I'm still alive is proof to me that prayers are answered and God has me. That's faith. I then shapeshift this into my future. Oh, I love that. I love that. Because what that's saying to me is that faith will fill whatever container you bring to the faucet. If I bring a coffee cup like the one I got right here, it'll give me that much. If I bring a bucket, it'll give me a bucket and take the shape of the container that it is poured into. So when we begin to cultivate faith in our life, we have to make sure that our container, our heart, our mind is open, is ready to receive. Right? You don't want to take a coffee cup that's dirty and pour fresh beverage in it. You want to make sure that that coffee cup is clean or rinsed out, or whatever method you use to make sure it is prepared for the content that is about to be poured in. That is about to be poured in. And we know every moment of life is continually pouring into us. Continually pouring into us. And so when we can work with that, and we can understand that this idea of faith being this knowledge within our hearts beyond the reach of proof, now as you can walk to the beat of your own drum, right? You don't have to conform to someone else's idea of what life is, or who you are, and how you should operate within it, right? Because right now you think about it. One of the most prevalent ideas that you will hear today is this idea of authenticity, being authentic, right? That's something that's really not seen. You see the evidence of someone being authentic, and you can tell by the way they are presenting themselves, challenging ideas, accepting ideas. You can look at their behavior and things of such and say, that's authentic, right? There's an energy to it. There's a presence to it. There's a palatable energy that connects with the unseen knowledge in your heart, in your mind, that says that person is being very authentic. They're being vulnerable, or they're being joyous, or whatever the situation has dictated. We're talking about faith. I would submit to you that we're talking about faith in the idea of how we present ourselves with the trust and the knowingness that we're operating from an evidence that says my life matters. I am important to the grand scheme of things. And when I can align myself with the message of divine love, I can weather any storm, I can climb any mountain, I can present miracles with this faith. Like the verse I'm sure a lot of you may have heard, all you need is the faith of a mustard seed. Now, I've never seen a mustard seed, but I'm told that I guess I have seen a mustard seed. If you've gotten Grey Poupon, I think Grey Poupon mustard has the little mustard seeds in it, and they are pretty small. But the verse says, if you have the faith of a mustard seed, you can move mountains. Look at the comparison to that little mustard seed. Even if it's a small mountain, that is a powerful expression of the divine within our lives that we have access to. I mean, because Ernest Holmes, our founder, says there's a power in the universe and I can use it. That's that mustard seed to move that mountain. That's what we need to begin to cultivate. That's what we must begin to understand when we talk about faith, is to have that idea of what's going on. Now, Dr. King said this, and this is very critical. Dr. King said, faith is taking the first step even when you don't see the whole staircase. Faith is taking the first step even when you don't see the whole staircase. Now think about, someone says, oh yeah, I want you to, go up on the top floor and bring back XYZ. And you just see one step, but the building is 10 feet tall. Faith is to say, I'm going to take this first step knowing that the next one will appear, or it's just beyond my vision, so I can't see it right now, but I know it's there. And when we can operate from that point of view, we understand that faith enhances one's ability to navigate life's challenges and uncertainties with grace, resilience, and optimism. That's what we're looking at when we're starting to cultivate this faith in our life, to understand faith, that we are bound by the knowledge that is already in our heart to unfold, to cultivate, to ignite, so that we can take life on life's terms. Right? When it rains, it don't rain just on me, it rains on everybody. And it's my mental attitude that dictates, if you will, whether I think the rain is good or bad. Right? You can have two people standing in the rain, and one person can say, oh, that's so lovely. And one person would say, oh man, this is so horrible. Same rain, same location, two different mental attitudes and perspectives. And that's what faith allows us to begin to work through. knowing that I have a faith regardless to what may be the appearances. Ernest Holmes says we have to look beyond appearances because things may not be what they appear, which is why we talk about faith dealing with things that are unseen, because I know appearances can be tricky. I know appearances can, if you have ever been to a magic show, right? Yeah, a friend of mine used to always say, the magician pulls a rabbit out the hat, but he can't pull that rabbit out the hat if the rabbit wasn't already in the hat, right? That's what we are looking at when we cultivate faith. It's this unseen thing. It's an energy presence, but it's unseen. Like no one has ever seen electricity. Now, if you disagree with me, let me know. But I would say no one has ever seen electricity. They have seen the results of electricity, or they have felt electricity. But the law of electricity, if you will, has never been seen. The thing itself, as Ernest calls it. And that's what faith is. Faith is this connection to the thing itself that is unseen, but we see the evidence of it everywhere we look. When things are in right alignment, when things are in congruent, which is congruent with these laws of the universe, as we said in the very beginning, this universal system, then things just happen. Imagine the first time that a rocket was sent into space and you were strapped in. There was a faith that this thing was going to work, that allowed you to sit in and strap in to go to the moon or to go for the first orbit. Right? There was some hope and some belief and some trust and some faith and all of that. But at the very end of the day, there was faith that this thing was going to work, or the astronauts would not have strapped themselves in those rockets. And as we know, we've had a couple of mishaps on space where things did happen. But before those happened, there was this trust, there was this knowingness that it created a faith that we could do this. Yes, it's hard. Yes, we have to align with the gravitational pull of the earth and all these different things that go into account when you launch a rocket from this planet. But when the rocket, just like us, are put in the right alignment, using the right perspective, these kinds of launchings, if you will, of a life, of a relationship, of a job happen, and they happen successfully. So let's begin to cultivate that kind of an idea so that we take the first step, even when we don't necessarily see the second step or the full staircase, because we know that when we operate from that perspective, whatever comes our way, we can handle it. We can handle it. And now once we step into that kind of frame of reference and that mindset, we want to have this perspective. I live in the faith that there is a presence and a power greater than I that nourishes and supports me in ways I could never imagine. As Shay said earlier, she said that, I have this relationship, I have this personal proof that allows me to operate from this perspective, that operates from this. I know that I am nurtured and supported in ways that I can't even imagine. And I'm sure if we each sat down and looked in the rearview mirror of our lives, we can see those moments when it happened. Just like in that, if you're familiar with that poem Footprints, you know, there's the story and the guy's walking on the beach and he's supposed to be walking with God, and he looks back and he sees that on occasions there's just one set of footprints as opposed to two. And he asked God, he says, God, I thought you said you was going to be by my side, and I look back and I don't see your footprints. And God replies, yes, that's because you only see one, because those were the moments that I carried you. That's what we're endeavoring to step into. A faith that says, when I get weary, when I'm in a place where I can't do it by myself, then God will take over, will give me the assistance. And I have the faith that that will happen. I have the faith that that will happen. And to do this, to activate your faith, we must have a conviction that all is well. To keep faith, we must allow nothing to enter our minds which weakens our conviction. Our mind must be steady. Now, a good example of this in nature, which is, I think, one of the best teachers and probably the best sacred book that we have, you can take a single drop of water and consistently drop it on concrete, on steel, and with the consistency and conviction of that one drop repeated over and over, it will drill a hole through a rock, through steel. That consistency, that conviction, and that's what we're looking to cultivate. That's how we activate it, with this idea of conviction, this steady, ready approach to life that says that there's nothing that can't be embraced, and that I don't let anything change my mind. How often have you had faith in something, but your conviction was a little lacking, and it allowed that thing, although it had gotten to the point to where you could see it, but didn't happen because you lost conviction, you lost focus, you lost your vision of it. This is what we're looking at when we talk about faith. It's this amalgamation of knowing and activating and surrendering and having a conviction, a steady conviction of an approach to life that is backed up by the intelligence of the universe. That's when we operate from that point, we know our faith is blossoming. We know our faith is supporting us and sustaining us and moving us in ways that we can't even imagine. So I'm going to stop right there. See if anyone has any questions. We're about 10-15 minutes into wrapping things up, and want to just see if there's any conversation, any reference points or aha moments of what faith means to you. What can you do to activate this faith in your life? And you don't even have to say it. The thing is to know for yourself what I need to do to elevate my faith, to activate it more in my life, to believe more in that unseen thing, because I know that there's a power present that is greater than me and I can use it. That's what we are striving for. And so when we're able to really understand faith and that whole idea of the evidence of things unseen, evidence of things unseen, there is nothing that we can't accomplish, because someone may come in and try to distract you from your vision, from your point of reference, but I'm working with evidence unseen. I'm getting the signs, the symbols, the nudges, sometimes gentle and sometimes not so gentle, that this thing that I'm believing in, this thing that I'm looking to manifest in the universe, is based on the evidence unseen. And the key is, it's an individual pursuit. It's an individual pursuit, because the way we all use electricity, let's say, is different. Some people use electricity to cut the light on. Some people use it to cut the computer on. Some people use it to cut the music, turn on the music of the stereo, right? That thing is used differently for each individual depending on the place, time, and circumstance. So that's how we have to begin, to look at this. Faith is an individual thing for me, but it can recognize the presence of it in other places, the use of it in other places. But I can take that law, if you will, of faith and individualize it for myself. You can individualize it for yourself. And that's what God has asked us to do. It says, you are a unique individual presence of the divine on earth. There's no one or nothing like you. So that means there's a responsibility to cultivate this thing. There's a responsibility for each one of us to find that faith, that evidence of unseen things, and bring it forth and make it apparent and be able to express it in a way that allows others to do the same. Because when we can do that, we can operate from this place of brotherly love and sisterly love and a care for humanity, with the faith that no matter what it looks like, do not act or judge according to appearances. No matter what it looks like, I have the faith that there is a solution, that there is an answer to any problem that we face, any challenge that we see. By having that faith, by cultivating that faith, those unseen things begin to make themselves known to us. And then, as it said, we can act on them. We can begin to put them in motion, right? And so when we look at it in that way, we come to this conclusion here that says this: faith is the oil that takes the friction out of life. Faith is the oil that takes the friction out of life. So just like oil reduces the wear and tear in machines, faith acts as a smoothing balm for the challenges and uncertainties we encounter. It smooths our journey, allows us to navigate life's twists and turns with resilience and hope. Right? Because that's where we start. Remember, we start at that hope place, because sometimes when we're in these challenging places, our faith may waver a little bit. But when we start with that hope, knowing that it's an evolutionary process, that we go through these things, and with this unseen evidence, we begin to have faith that pushes us into a knowingness that allows us to be the power, the presence that is God in every place, at all times, no matter the situation. No matter the situation. So I'm going to stop there, and I'm going to leave you with that idea that faith is the oil that takes the friction out of life. And I would say, take that this week and just meditate on that idea of faith being the oil that takes the friction out of life. Because that's how we become truly representatives of the Most High God, with a unique purpose, a unique idea and expression of love in this place. And so with that, I'll yield. I'll see if there's any questions, anything before we before we wrap up and take this as food for our Saturday and begin to work from this idea of faith. Faith the size of a mustard seed that will allow us to move mountains. So if there's any questions, any comments, I ask you, please submit. And if not, I want to thank you for being here. I hope there's been one or two things that you can take for this week and cultivate them and allow them to enlighten your world and enlighten your travels on this journey, on this grand adventure called life. And so with that, I release, I let go, and I know that life is absolutely so. And so it is. Amen.